Pela primeira vez após a aprovação do ETF de Bitcoin à vista, Gensler se pronuncia na TV americana, deixando muito claro a sua insatisfação e a sua irritabilidade com a presença do ETF de Bitcoin, que ontem bateu recorde de negociação no seu primeiro dia. Vamos ver nessa entrevista um homem ressentido, aparentemente magoado e como um marido traído que só fala mal daquilo que não pode ter mais. Então veja aí, Gensler destilando todo o seu ódio contra o Bitcoin. Vamos para a entrevista.
What is your message to investors about Bitcoin now? Because we're going to have all sorts of public investors now potentially have access to Bitcoin in a way that they didn't before. We were just talking to Larry Fink. He said that he got a huge wave of new investors getting into Bitcoin through this ETF. You have still suggested to be cautious about it, and I'm trying to understand how you think about those cross currents in terms of the message you're telling investors.
Well, look, Bitcoin itself, we did not approve, we do not endorse. This is a product called an exchange-traded product, a way that investors can invest in that underlying non-security commodity called Bitcoin. But yes, investors, I think, should be aware that the underlying asset is a highly speculative, volatile asset, and amongst its use cases is really for illicit activity, money laundering and sanctions and ransomware and the like. And I know that you've asked other people over the last few days, is it being used as a store of value? It's a speculative, volatile store of value. Is it being used as a payment anywhere? Are we buying cups of coffee with it? Not really. The only payment mechanism it's being used for in a primary sense is illicit activity. So I think you've been spot on about that, Andrew.
So just on that note, Mr. Chairman, this is out, and I'm not going to take either side on the whole thing, and it's kind of funny. But these are, I don't know the exact units, but if you look since 2017, what's been used to launder money, 20,000 is the unit for, 20,000 is the unit for $1, 33 is the unit for Bitcoin. So that's a multiple of I don't know how much for dollars being used for money laundering versus Bitcoin. But now I could see Bitcoin bears saying, really? Well, it's not even good for money laundering. Then it has zero value. I could just see that as another arrow in the quiver for the bear case. But the question I wanted to ask you was this: let's take the continuum. Let's take the rat poison, Beanie Baby, Jamie Dimon, Charlie Munger versus we had yesterday on our Coinbase CEO. Did you hear him make the case for Bitcoin? I mean, it was almost like a symphony to Bitcoin bulls, Chair Gensler. The proof of work, akin to gold. Every monetary aspect we've had for thousands of years is represented perfectly. And Tom Lee, there's never been a mistake on the blockchain out of trillions of transactions. You understand it. You taught at MIT. Which is it? Is it a Beanie Baby in your view, or is it something that has inherent value that's going to be part of the financial system decades from now? Which is it?
Look, no doubt there are innovations within this field, and those innovations, which I taught about at MIT, around a ledger system. It's just an accounting system called the blockchain technology. But there's an irony in the midst of this. Satoshi Nakamoto said this was going to be a decentralized system. And finance, this has led to centralization. Think about the irony of those who say this week is historic. This was about centralization and traditional means of finance that investors who could already express themselves in Bitcoin, you could already, before this week, buy it through major brokerage houses, but now you can buy it through this thing called an exchange-traded product
But the
as
underlying
well,
asset still has
centralized.
The underlying asset still has the decentralized, distributed ledger, all those characters. That sounds like a, I don't know. That sounds like
no, Andrew. With all respect, there's a lot of centralization here, and even the underlying ledger is largely the Bitcoin's produced by a handful of mining companies and the like. And so I'm just saying now, in terms of monetary history, we have a dollar, we have a yen, we have a euro, we have the renminbi, and there's a reason for it because we do have a common economy that relies on those currencies.
Chair Gensler, let me ask you this, though. Is there a possibility, despite the fact that this has been now approved, that this spot ETF has been approved, that you could see a day where Bitcoin itself in some way would be outlawed? I ask because if you recall, and now there's a lawsuit taking place between Coinbase and the SEC. They went public, and they've now made you've come back and said there are certain unregistered securities and the like that are on their platform. They say, well, if you approved us the first time, how can you come back and say that this is not kosher? And so I think there is this other question about, and I know you're not endorsing Bitcoin, does that still open up the possibility that Bitcoin could somehow come under fire from the SEC or some other agency?
Look, let me talk about this field more broadly. And the American public is aware of this. It's rife with conflicts. It's rife with fraud and abuse without prejudging any one token. Many of these tokens, I would suggest a majority of these tokens are actually securities under the securities law. And so the platforms, the various places that you might buy or sell these crypto security tokens need to come into compliance with the federal laws.
What did you make of what Elizabeth Warren, who was very supportive of you taking this role originally, coming out and saying the SEC is wrong on the law and wrong on the policy?
I have deep respect for those who may have been on the other side of this. But again, I have a deep respect for the law and how courts interpret the law. We had the D.C. Circuit, a three-judge panel rule on this. We looked at it, and I thought this was the most sustainable path forward.
How do you think about other cryptocurrencies? People are now talking about whether there should be an Ethereum ETF and the like. Is that something you think you would take on proactively? Is that something that ultimately, in the same way that Grayscale had to go to court, does the court decision around Bitcoin to you act as a precedent on other currencies?
I look at what we did this week as it's cabined to one non-security commodity called Bitcoin. Like we've had gold, spot, exchange-traded products, and silver exchange-traded products in the past and approved in the past. This is cabined just to that one non-security commodity token.
E se você ainda não é inscrito na Academia Cripto Com Fé, o link está na descrição do vídeo. Venha participar do melhor e maior hub de conhecimento do mercado de criptomoedas. Você vai experimentar um conteúdo completamente personalizado para você. Você que é iniciante ou você que já está no mercado há algum tempo. Na Academia Cripto Com Fé nós temos treinamentos de análise gráfica, treinamentos de DeFi, acompanhamento diário, análises gráficas exclusivas e informações privilegiadas e todo um overview do mercado de criptomoedas diariamente para te deixar extremamente preparado para o ano do halving do BTC. Então vem para a Academia Cripto Com Fé, o link está na descrição do vídeo. Grande abraço!